then we'll click the go live button. Oh boy. Welcome everybody to a WineShark Wednesday. It is I, your host of WineShark, here on a Wednesday, hence the name. It's been an interesting week, kind of getting almost into that feeling of fall. I got my orange shirt on, although it's one of my Warhammer 40,000 shirts. It's still, I'm getting into that mode. The decorations at the grocery store are obviously influencing my mood. But this is good. I love the fall. I'm very excited. The weather even kind of moderately cooled down. It's not a bajillion degrees, and so it's giving us a brief respite. Here in Texas, it tends to go up and down, so whatever. But that's kind of cool. You know, I enjoy the fact that we're at least headed in the right direction, although we're supposed to get some rain from this hurricane that's been blowing through, so hope everybody is safe through that. Anyway, WineShark Wednesdays today. Topic, Fumé Blanc. What is it? Well, this is an interesting case of California marketing gone French yet again. So before we get started, though, let me just give you kind of a what's coming up here soon. For those that are here at the beginning of the show, Australian White Wines, free show, September 24th. That should be Friday night. And it is a wonderful dive into some eclectic and different styles of wine from Australia. White wine, although the powerful reds of Australia kind of made them famous, their white wines are equally fun, so I encourage you to join us. It's a free show. You can have any Australian white wine you want. There's a list of what I'll be drinking on the Eventbrite ticketing, but tickets are free per connection, so grab some buddies, grab some bottles, and hang out and join me for an excellent dive into Australia's white wine world and some fun stuff there. Plus, we are going to be back at the Tower, at Reunion Tower, for the Flavors of Fall in 24 October. Okay, so that's a Sunday evening show where we're going to be talking about the flavors of fall. It's my fall flavor show, so I'm very excited about that. So, hope you'll join us for either one of those. But, back to our topic at hand. Fumé Blanc. So in brief, as I said, this is a California rebranding of the Sauvignon Blanc varietal name. But why, one might ask, would one do this? Well, first, just understand that grape varietal names and naming that we see throughout the wine world is widely varied. Some grapes literally have dozens of different nicknames as opposed to their scientific definitions, and therefore, to say a grape is only one thing, it's usually tends to be just its most popular name and its most common name. So the wine grape, Sauvignon Blanc, is a very popular and iconic kind of style of wine. It is one of the original kind of white noble varieties that came out of France, and is the father to Cabernet Sauvignon, or mother to Cabernet Sauvignon, depending on how you decide to identify parental grapes, which don't have sex. But anyway, it is the progenitor of Cabernet Sauvignon, along with Cabernet Franc, and it is a wonderful, light, high-acid white wine. Well, Sauvignon Blanc was one of the first wines that actually had this kind of California marketing twist in California. That's kind of redundant. Actually, let me restate that. It was one of the first wines that began using the varietal name Sauvignon Blanc as an identifier. Early in California history, many of the local wine growers were naming their wines after their originating regions in France or Italy. So you'd see things like Grave be listed as the type of wine it was, or Burgundy or Chablis. Okay, so if they were growing Pinot Noir, they were calling it Burgundy because that's where the grapes that they got originally came from. Well, we know that today that's not really accurate, right? We have modern laws that define specific regions where grapes are grown, and that geographically define that the grapes must be grown there and the wines must be made there. Well, we still did that in America in our early wine history. And in the 1930s, a man named Frank Schumacher came over and to a lot of California winemakers. And while at the same time that he was trying to reinvigorate the European importing trade in the post-prohibition world, he was also trying to help the California winemakers and develop a U.S. wine trade as well. He was a businessman, was trying to build up a wine portfolio, but he actually convinced folks to start using grape names as their wine labels, meaning the Grave that I was referring to earlier, which is a region of Bordeaux, a sub-region thereof, it makes what? Sauvignon Blanc. Well, the winemakers at Fumé Vineyards in Liverpool, he convinced them to actually call it Sauvignon Blanc by its name. And the sales skyrocketed, and things kind of went very much in their favor. This effectively kicked off the very idea that we hold true today, that in the New World, we talk about grape more than we talk about region. And so I find that this kind of story that gets all the way back to this very concept is rather interesting. But between the 1930s and the 1960s, not only do we have a world war that kind of disrupted European wine imports, and California's wine industry finally started coming back online in the 50s and 60s, Sauvignon Blanc had built up a reputation as a sweeter style of wine, often with these asparagus vegetal-like notes. I've heard asparagus. I've heard that it has more of an arugula or a salad kind of note to it. And either way, the reputation that it has was either as kind of plonk table wine that was overly sweet, or this really awful kind of weird vegetal blend that didn't really go with anything. And so that negative stereotype was what inspired what the very famous winemaker and hugely influential wine creator in American wine history, Robert Mondavi. Mondavi was revolutionizing the American wine industry in the 1960s, and then especially in California, bringing kind of a combination of European style and flair with American marketing techniques and modern aspects of basically a lot more of the modernity that we see in modern winemaking. So he did a lot of interesting things, not only including bringing more rigorous standards to hygiene and grape cultivation and a lot of other things that helped clean California up and get it in the right place to be a maker of amazing wine, but also really was inspired by a lot of the things that he saw over in Europe, and I would say he counter influenced them as well in showing what America was doing and giving them some fun new ideas that encouraged the expansion of the European wine market. So anyway, highly influential, Robert Mondavi, most people have heard of him. And anyway, he decided he really wanted to produce a Sauvignon Blanc style. He had this wonderful crop, but this horrible kind of stigma hanging over his wine, that if he labeled it Sauvignon Blanc, that it wouldn't get the sales it deserved. Now, I've heard a couple of different versions of this legend in various sources. But the general idea is he really wanted to make a wine that had its own shot, that was going to be given a fair shake, and so he came up with the name Fumé Blanc. Okay, so he just took the last part of Sauvignon Blanc and kept it, but renamed the first part. The first part is also a borrowed name in the world of the wine nicknaming. Okay, so Pouilly-Fumé is a region in France that makes a specific type of white wine that has this. Fumé literally means smoke. In fact, the Pouilly-Fumé literally has that sort of a gun smoke or flinty-like aroma to it. That's where it gets its name. Now, I've seen written that the Fumé Blanc was given that name because Robert Mondavi aged these Sauvignon Blancs in oak. I've also just heard that it simply was a little audio styling of aesthetics where, it just sounds fancy. That Fumé sounds very French. And so Fumé Blanc was just a fun new nickname that he could use for the grape to give it a nice fresh shot at a new market. So interestingly, if you look up what this is in most sources on the internet and or in printed materials, you'll see that it means a fully dry fermented Sauvignon Blanc that has been aged in oak. Well, that reality is outdated. While that might have been true back in the 1960s and 70s and maybe even up to the 80s, it is no longer the case. I find that almost all the Fumé Blancs that I encounter these days are much more clean styled. They are not oak aged, they're stainless steel aged. They are much more akin to their internationally styled cousins from France and New Zealand. So I really feel that California's kind of re-earned its reputation in the Sauvignon Blanc world and is worth a second shot. Once again, reminding ourselves that the wine world isn't static, and nor should your opinions about wines be, because what was true 20 years ago is no longer true today in the way that people's tastes and the winemaking methods are. So it's a good opportunity for us to again flex that flexibility muscle and try something again. So I had actually tried several different versions of this over the course of the years. I had always enjoyed it. I had never recognized it as an oaked wine, but that's because I don't think the versions I had either were very neutrally oaked or possibly just stainless steel in the first place. So I really think that California's kind of re-earned its status. And if you think about, then if put it as a third style, it's kind of in between its French and New Zealand cousins. France, being the original kind of style, is very grassy, mineral-driven, very racy, high-acid Sauvignon Blanc. Perfect for seafood partnering and almost, just stainless steel straight razor sharp, right? Very, very high-pitched acid bombs. Then you get New Zealand, which is very tropical grapefruit, sometimes this briny green olive thing with excellent fruit and acid balance. They're wonderfully drinkable, very, very approachable, and they really put New Zealand on the map when it came to Sauvignon Blanc. California now, I think, is kind of in the middle. It gets this kind of green melon there's still a little bit of herbaceousness to it occasionally, but I pick it up often as more of a green onion chive kind of thing. It tastes more herbal, it doesn't remind me of asparagus, because asparagus and white wine have a long history of being kind of really difficult to pair together, especially sweeter white wines. They kind of overblow the asparagus' vegetal notes, and they're not really fun tasting together. So I don't think that asparagus really enters much into it, but there's definitely a hint of green in there. And their acid overall is less than their French cousins and about equal to, if they're not quite as fruity as the New Zealand versions, they have that moderate fruit, moderate acid. So they're kind of a hedge in the middle. Price point wise, there's some excellent examples out there for anywhere between 10 to 20 bucks, and so they're very much in the game when it comes to the rest of the Sauvignon Blanc world. So that is Fumé Blanc. That is what Fumé Blanc is. Don't be confused, but when you see it on the label, you actually know this grape. The version we're going to try today, the grocery store grab, actually covers all the bases. This is a great example of awesome labeling. Now, this is a brand that I'm actually familiar with. Dry Creek Vineyards makes the Zinfandel, the Heritage Vine Zinfandel that I keep at the house all the time, but I'd never tried their Fumé Blanc before. And so when I had this opportunity, took a look, and not only that, it made a great example for the grocery store. So the grocery store grab is our attempt to get the best value per dollar at non-big box and non-specialty wine stores. In other words, you have to show up at the grocery store for convenience or necessity, and you're in a place where you don't necessarily have good wine advice running around the aisles, you really need to rely on wine labeling, and we like to reward wines that do good job at describing what's in the bottle and helping us as a consumer make good wine choices. So, I said I choose these without prior research, although that doesn't mean I don't know the names. I usually have never had the wine before. And then I base it on the label focus. So today's example is the Dry Creek Fumé Blanc. But if you look closely at this label, you'll notice it also says Sauvignon Blanc right underneath it. I think the pendulum is swinging the other way, where people don't know what Fumé Blanc is, and they are fans of Sauvignon Blanc. So now they're actually including this information on the label. Now, the picture that I'm showing you here that I picked up off the Intertubes is actually less informative than the newer label that I've got for the 2020 version of this. The 2020 version of this is what I would call a high transparency label, meaning they are vomiting up information, volunteering it, if you will, all over the label to tell us lots about their wine in an effort to really cater to people that pay attention to labeling. So I think this is something we can look forward to in the future, especially with the up and coming generation of wine drinkers from the all the way from my own Gen X self all the way through our millennials and Gen Zers. So this, for instance, on the front of this label, it says Fumé Blanc Sauvignon Blanc. It says handcrafted from our estate vineyards and small local family farms in Sonoma County, California, Appalachian. This, by the way, is written in a table format. Fermentation, written right on the front, 100% stainless steel, no oak aging. So the idea that Fumé Blanc is always oak aged, dispelled right there. Also, flavor profile is written on the front of the label. Racy acidity, ripe citrus, and steely minerality. Then there's a viticultural philosophy section because, hey, you want to know what these people feel about how they grow their grapes? This is one of the reasons I love this winery, by the way, though. They are sustainably farmed to maximize biodiversity, vineyard longevity, and superb wine quality. And they also have wellness details because this is part of that wellness market play. It's gluten-free, vegan, and minimal intervention. Now, believe it or not, getting those three things, getting the first two of those things is pretty darn easy because there wasn't gluten in it to begin with. And being vegan generally means they're just not using gelatin in their fining process. So basically speaking, they're including what's already on there just so that they can get that extra add. The back of the label now, effectively has very little else to tell us, right? We've got, I have to mute my phone. Sorry about that, folks. Anyway, Fumé Blanc is at the heart and soul of our family's winery. In 1972, our founder, David State, chose the term Fumé Blanc to describe his flagship white wine, a dry Sauvignon Blanc crafted in the Loire Valley style. We have continued this tradition for nearly 50 years. Each lot of this wine, this refreshing Fumé Blanc, was fermented separately in 100% stainless steel with no oak aging to preserve the vibrant citrus and steely mineral characters that define this wine. There's another small table. Basically, it says that where the vineyard was located on the valley floor, 13.5 alcohol percent by volume, dry in style, 6.6 grams per liter of total acidity, and a 3.39 pH. This, guys, is the whole kit and a various caboodles included for you when it comes to a wine label. This is everything I could want except for food pairing. And again, I think we've talked at length about food pairing. I really think that that's becoming much more of a rarity just because I think they're afraid of pigeonholing themselves. So in other words, it's more complicated than a couple of words, so they just don't bother. But this is brilliant. It tells you everything you could possibly want to know about the wine. If you're a wine person and you're an expert, you can look at this and kind of get a picture of what you should be tasting, even if you didn't already know what Fumé Blanc and Sauvignon Blanc was. You reading the actual, so the high acidity, and the only thing they didn't put in here is RS, the residual sugar factor. But yeah, 6.6 grams per liter and 3.39 acidity says that it's got more grams per liter than its acidity, and its acidity is pretty low pitch. 3.3 out of 3 is about the lowest that white wines get. So that's pretty tart, pretty pingy. And then I love that little section right on the front that says flavor profile. I'm like, could I ask for anything better if I didn't know what Sauvignon Blanc or Fumé Blanc tasted like? It tastes like racy acidity, ripe citrus, and steely minerality. So let's find out whether they were accurate, or whether they're just lying to us. Maybe they actually ground up a vegan in here and we don't even know it. So, yeah, the nose definitely strikes towards the I would say that tropical note. It's not quite the same grapefruit that I would expect out of a New Zealand version, but it's more on the that starfruit / pink grapefruit kind of note. Maybe even a bit of lime. There's more of it's definitely citrusy as well, right? So there's that, but it doesn't have that bright grapefruit note that I get out of a lot of New Zealand ones. But you can smell the acid on it for sure. There's a little twingle in your nose that tells you, hey, something sharp is coming. Just like when you, and if you've ever open up an ammonia bottle and you smell it and you get that wince of ammonia chemical, there's that your nose is also physically aware of chemicals in the air, and that acidity is one thing that your nose can detect pretty easy. That physical sensation, not just an aroma. Okay, so we'll swirl this down and give it a taste. Yeah. Like I said, we're already going to jump ahead. It's dead on style, like I spoke to earlier. The acid is sharp, but it's fairly well balanced with its fruit. It doesn't doesn't jump off the palate too much. Now it definitely performs more in the lemon category to me. Has that kind of either regular lemon and or almost sweet Meyer lemon. It's a little bit full-bodied, kind of around the middle of the tongue. And then its acidity just basically makes it slip off your palate. It doesn't last very long at all. Star fruit, there is a hint of minerality here. This is a thing that you don't often see in New World wines as much, but there's a nice tone here of either river rock or wet stone that is really kind of right and kind of hits the middle of the palate really nicely. Again, kind of hitting that middle point between New Zealand and France. This has that some French characteristics, some New Zealand characteristics. It's actually a nice Venn diagram of the middle portion of this. Like I said, it doesn't have so much acid that it really kicks off my salivary glands. It's not that kind of juicy, but it definitely presents as acid front. 0 degrees of sweetness whatsoever, right? There's nothing to this that would even speak of sweet. And this type of fruit, that citrus, lemon, grapefruit kind of line, star fruit even, really don't present as sweet anyway, so our palate isn't expecting it to be sweet. So to that point, it does what it says on the tin, so to speak. Now, clean, easy, not too all over the place, right? I mean, it's definitely direct. It's not, there's only a couple of layers to peel back and then it's done, which is exactly what we want out of this wine, right? This is a simple, approachable, high acid, bomb that really speaks to the California is definitely in the game for Sauvignon Blanc. Despite it being a cool growing region, Sonoma County definitely has that maritime influence, hence their ability to grow this wine just like they do up in France. So, is it well executed? Absolutely. There's not a flaw in this wine. Is it on style? As I said, this could not be more in the middle of the Venn diagram as I described it earlier. Is it worth the price tag? At $12 a bottle, you're damned right. This is an easy pick when it comes to choice and opportunity. This is about $18 before the discount label, but basically you see this online. It'll retail anywhere from about $10 to $12. It's very well worth the price. And if you want to try a new Sauvignon Blanc, if you want to expand your Sauvignon Blanc palate, food pairing wise, I would love to see this with its French style counterparts. I want to go have like oysters Rockefeller with this. I don't like raw oysters personally, but that's the other pairing that's kind of iconic with this. But I would love to have like oysters Rockefeller, some salty cheese in there, and that nice breadcrumbs and garlic and butter and oyster. And, oh man, so good. Briny, saline, awesome. So definitely check it out. Get yourself a bottle and enjoy. I mean, the good news here is, I mean, Dry Creek Vineyards, as I have been experienced with them, is a good quality maker. So I had high hopes that this wine would sail for them. No pun intended, because they do use the boat on the label. But regardless, I find them to be a very credible winemaker, and I'm very glad we picked this up and got to feature them today. So, okay. So once again, Australian White Wines, free show, 24th, so a couple of Fridays from now. Then Flavors of Fall, 24 October is coming up. Then Texas tour dates. I swear, I've been working through this and I've got the money now. It's all good. Hey, things are good. I figured out how to do I'm trying to figure out how to do a van, which was a recommended request, so that you guys don't have to drive. I do all the driving, which is good for everybody, I think. So we're going to be getting those out, and tickets will start being available. That's going to happen on the 7th, 8th, 9th of October. So tickets very soon on Eventbrite. Then last but not least, I have an interesting idea. I'm doing a very special party this weekend. And after I do it, I'm going to offer it to you, the general public, to see if there's something that is interested in. I'm going to do it as a format where this would be a hosted dinner that would be hosted by yours truly. Meaning, if you happen to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, then what I will do is I will sell tickets to this special event, and it is, instead of I come to your place and do a wine tasting for you in the comfort of your very own home, instead you will be invited to the comfort of my very own home, and you will get to sit down for up to 6 guests, and I will serve a very special themed dinner that you guys may really kind of enjoy. So more about that next Wednesday. So, questions, right? Have you guys ever tried Fumé Blanc? Do you have a Sauvignon Blanc fetish? If you're in the mood for something white and acidic, is Sauvignon Blanc your go-to, or do you have something else? Put it in the comments down below after the show. I'd really love to hear from you guys. I'm always looking for suggestions for topics for the show, so please include those in there too. All the spammers, thank you for trying so hard. At least makes me know that at least somebody out there is watching. But all my regular fans are like kind of mad at you for putting out the trash in my comments, so stop that. Anyway, if you like what we're doing, like and subscribe, share with a wine-loving friend. If you really like what we're doing, come check us out over on Patreon. Special extra discounts on ticketing, special events. By the way, they're probably going to get first dibs to the special dinner. And of course, which I may do more than once, you never know. And then, of course, they also get special wine lists, recordings of all of our Zoom meetings so that you have a wine library of knowledge to go to, and special events and recipe stuff too. So there's lots of cool stuff over on Patreon if you're so inclined to support me there. I would appreciate it, and you guys are awesome. I hope you guys have a wonderful week and wonderful weekend. Enjoy yourself a nice glass of Fumé Blanc, and come join me. So until next time, I've been your WineShark. Cheers. So good.